Hi, everybody. That's the cue. So I was asked to welcome you all to tonight. It gives me my distinct pleasure and honor as the interim dean of the School for New Learning at DePaul University to extend that welcome and to thank the organizers, Michelle, David, Judah, and others of the Great Colleges Network, love the name, for putting this together, bringing us together, and for all of you to be here. So it's really a pleasure to host you here tonight. Of course, we look forward to tomorrow at National Louis University, and a fun, packed 3 or 4 days of networking, exchanging ideas, getting to know each other, and getting empowered to do something good in the world, right? That's what this is all about. The School for New Learning at DePaul University has been a pioneer in this field since 1972. We've offered degree programs both at the undergraduate level and at the graduate level for adult learners. We're known as a leader in competency-based education, prior learning assessment, and more recently in the area of professional studies. I have to say that the work set out for us for this institute and beyond is as meaningful today, more meaningful today than ever. I really think there's a lot of pressures in higher education today that have created challenges, not only for institutions, across the board, but particularly for serving this demographic. I really was, illuminated to the idea of the non-traditional student when David Scobey came a number of years ago here to DePaul and started using the language of the new majority. And I thought that is such a powerful phrase because it really changes the paradigm. It's not about college students writ large. It's not about the traditional learners who, are recruited right out of high school, although we do love the high school students, Jessica. It's about the full landscape of students, students across the learning trajectory, whether they're, coming in right out of high school, even, pre-college, while they're still in high school. But also those who have stopped out of school for a while and now education has new meaning for them at their points in their careers and lives. And then of course beyond that, they get their degree, they want to come back for more learning. And we want to be around, to provide that learning. The pressures though, institutions are really bearing down in ways that I think we haven't experienced in the past. To enter a much more competitive climate. And that climate is shaped by demographics, so we know that on the traditional learner side, there are declining enrollments and there are declining incoming pools of prospective students, particularly in the Midwest and in the Northeast. It's not true, across the nation, but even in those places where there's growth, we know that growth doesn't always mean an easier time. It could be more competition. And alongside that, there are rising costs, both in terms of serving students, but also running institutions. And so there's pressures, across the board. There's talks of reorganizations, mergers. It's interesting how there are both positives and challenges that come with that. Of course, we here at DePaul also feel these pressures, and so I'm very happy to be part of this conversation because I expect to take lots of notes and do some hopefully strategic networking that will be beneficial both for my institution but also collaboratively for this national network that we're building. So having said that, I want to again thank you for coming and to welcome you. I look forward to getting to know all of you, more, and I think that's going to be facilitated by dinners and drinks. Sorry, it's been a long day. Of course, I wasn't.
Nothing to apologize for.
Of course, I wasn't on a plane traveling or anything. So, and I know some of you were. Or on train rides, stall drive freight trains and whatnot. Okay, so now I've been asked to provide introductions to our esteemed panelists here. So that's going to be the first order of business. And although it's in your program, I think it's worth me calling out these scholars and teachers and organizers that we have with us today. And I'll start with David Scobey because he's truly our leader. So Dr. Scobey is director of Bringing Theory to Practice. A Washington, D.C. based project that works to renew the core purposes of college education, engaged learning. Love that, engaged learning. Preparation for meaningful work, civic engagement, and the personal flourishing of all students through innovative projects, collaborative research, and public advocacy. From 1985 to 2005, he was a member of the University of Michigan faculty, teaching American Studies, U.S. Cultural History, and the history of urbanism and architecture. I mentioned to a couple of you that I was trained in history of science, so history is a special place in my heart, and I love that. He's got this historical background. In 1998, he founded Arts of Citizenship, a UM program that fostered public work and community projects in the arts, humanities, and design. Between 2005 and 2010, he was the Donald W. and Ann M. Harward Professor of Community Partnerships at Bates College and the inaugural director of the Harward Center for the Community Partnerships. From 2010 to 2014, he served as the founding executive dean of the School for Public Engagement at the New School in New York City. In 2016 to 18, he was senior scholar for the Graduate! Network, a consortium of regional efforts dedicated to improving college access and success for adult learners. And so we're very pleased that David is with us here tonight. Let me then move on to Dr. Michelle Navarre Cleary, also a linchpin in this organization, both here at DePaul and beyond DePaul. She is Associate Professor at DePaul School for New Learning, and she's founding director of the writing program at SNL. She's also served as Associate Dean of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment and a Senior Director for Innovation. And let me tell you, she has been an innovator. Her research focuses primarily on adult learners, writing instruction, and competency-based education. Her recent publications include Competency-Based Education as a Force for Equity. I like that, a force for equity. In the Journal of Competency-Based Education, and Learning Adults and Competency-Based Education in the Handbook of Research on Competency-Based Education in University Settings. I also want to add that Michelle has been quite a mentor to me, and I continue to learn from her, so it gives me great pleasure to introduce and welcome her. And then finally, we have Dr. Catherine Marienau, professor and faculty mentor here at DePaul School for New Learning. I don't even have to read this because half of what she does isn't even on here, but she's director of our Center for Advancing the Education of Adults. She's director of our Master of Arts in Educating Adults, one of the graduate programs we that we have here at the School for New Learning. She is co-author with Kathleen Taylor of St. Mary's College of Facilitating Learning with the Adult Brain and Mind, and with whom she offers faculty development workshops and conference presentations. And I should also say that she's been a wonderful mentor to us all. So with that, I will hand this over to the panel.
Thank you, Don. So I'm supposed to be just the kind of the
discussion facilitator here. But first, I have some announcements. The most important of which, of course, is the location of the bathrooms. And they're actually right out this door and behind us, if you haven't already found them. A couple other just business things. If you need to get wireless access this evening so that you can make notes or something. I believe this works now. No, it doesn't work. All right, I'm sorry, you're just gonna have to pay attention to the panel. We just switched, DePaul just switched the way it does its wireless, so sorry about that. We'll get that fixed. Nicholas Hayes is one of our wonderful writing instructors and also our fantastic student support person, is volunteering to do videotaping tonight to record this. But if anyone does not want to be on the recording, if you could just let him know and we'll make sure that you're edited out, okay? You should have gotten from me a link to the Google Drive folder in which we'll be adding stuff, and it has this with, when you can just link it, it's much easier. One thing is we wanted to we know we won't be able to talk about and cover all the things we're going to want to cover over the next couple of days. So, we thought we would do the idea of a parking lot where you have a little piece of paper stuck up on the wall. And we will do that, but I also just put in the Google Drive folder a Google Doc called the Commons. I think a grassy commons is a much better thing than a paved over parking lot. Every time I think of parking lot, I think of that song, the Paved Paradise. So I forgot to put up the sheet though, so Sarah, if you could the sheets and stick it up if people want to. That's just questions or issues you want to make sure get covered that are not getting covered right now. So you can put it in the digital thing, and then we'll also translate from the paper later. And let me please give credit to Sarah Ryan from Evergreen State College, which is where we first gathered as a group. And she's one of our co-organizers, and also Adam Bush from College on Bounds in Providence, Rhode Island, which is where we were last year. So the two of them, along with Judah and myself and David, have organized this, and then Catherine has graciously come in to help us with this panel. One quick question to help our cooks, which is if we could have a show of hands of how many people are planning to come to Judah's house tomorrow evening for dinner. Let me put a pitch out for the dinners, because often that's when some of the best kind of deep conversations happen. A lot of you said what you really want is conversation and community and talking with other people because you feel isolated. But I just wanted just to help us with our planning. The dinner will be at Judah's house tomorrow night and at my house on Wednesday night. We both live in Chicago, and we can guide you on public transportation to get to these places. So, and you get to see a little bit of Chicago's famous neighborhoods if you haven't already. But just to show of hands, how many are planning to come tomorrow night? And again, this is not a absolute, but just to give us a sense of what to make sure we have.
All right.
Great, got it.
Okay, how about Wednesday nights? Excellent, thank you. Okay, so I think we are ready to get going here. So we decided to do this sort of unconventional thing of letting you preview the questions, and I will facilitate this conversation between the two of them until about 6:45, at which point my phone is going to vibrate to tell us all to shut up and start taking questions from you, okay? So the first question, I bet a lot of you do this. You find it very powerful when your adult students come in to ask them to tell their story, and to ask them to think about their moments of challenge and their moments of learning and their aha moments. It helps them, as I say, name and claim their experiential learning. So, but we're going to start by asking that of Catherine and then David. And we have to keep it brief. So this is, you're just getting the Reader's Digest version, because you know these two folks have very rich stories. So Catherine.
Well, welcome, good evening. I'm going to ask you to do a little time travel with me. And let's go back to 1969. Some of you don't even know 1969. I was an undergraduate student, and I had the privilege of working for a place called the Help Center, Higher Education for Low-Income People. And it was keep in mind, in 1969, this was a great, wonderful time of experimenting and innovating, reform. And the Help Center was serving all the students who were marginalized. The older students, the single mothers, the ex-offenders, the students of color who benefited from having a welcoming place. So we provided personal counseling, academic advising, academic tutoring, financial aid counseling, kind of a one-stop shop. And I was an academic tutor. And for someone like me who came from a farming community in central Minnesota, where the difference was whether you were Norwegian or Swedish, this was quite an experience for me. And it's really where I got my start in the field of adult higher education, alternative education. So in 1971, I saw a little ad in the newspaper about University Without Walls, a national movement. And the University of Minnesota was going to be one of 12 original University Without Walls. And I thought, I had no idea what I was going to be doing. I thought, this is my calling, this is where I'm going to be. I'm going to work here. And I managed to say I will work for almost nothing, which I did. And in those days, it was very much about access and equity and reform. We're definitely dedicated to reforming higher education, which I actually didn't know that much about, but it really sounded good to me to be reforming. So we were doing distance learning, we were doing individualized narrative transcripts, no grades, assessment of prior learning, all those things that many of you are so familiar with that we were inventing on the spot. I became director of that program for a number of years, and then spent a lot of time with the Higher Learning for Diverse Adults project at Memphis State. That was a national federally funded project. And then I've been at School for Learning since 1983. It was about the late 1970s when a colleague and I said, what are we doing? Who are we serving? What are these programs about? And we decided then that, oh, this must be about adult learning. I bet that's who we're serving. Let's use adult learners as our umbrella. And that has worked for me ever since. And so it's that whole range of non-traditional, anybody who fits under that umbrella of adult learners. That's my story.
Sticking to it.
Sticking to it.
David?
So with me, you'll have to travel on a time machine all the way back to 2011. I had spent the previous 15 years doing a lot of wonderful work about civic and community-based learning, beginning at the University of Michigan and then at Bates College, and was very committed, maybe above all, to what I call the democracy project of higher education, and was focused on it in terms of how we teach and learn and how universities work with communities, but in very traditional academic settings with largely traditional students. And I became the dean of an experimental division at the new school called the School for Public Engagement that was trying to reorganize a whole college around practices of engagement. So there was a media studies program, an international relations program, and there was also a bachelor's program for adult and returning students. And I had been every bit as clueless about the prevalence of adult non-traditional students as almost every other friend I had in the academy in my world. And it was really the students at the new school who schooled me, who educated me. Who schooled me about their intentionality, their passion for being back in college, for the struggles that they went through, for the demands and the rigor of what they expected. And I think I had two aha moments in that. One was the first time I presided over commencement at the School for Public Engagement. where graduates would come with their children and their mothers up on stage, that literally these families made the rafters shake at the theater at the new school. And I thought it was really the most transcendent experience I'd had. And after a year or so, I became more and more moved and fascinated by these non-traditional students at the new school who were kind of like hipster culture worker warrior versions of adult because of the new school. And I started a public engagement fellowship, a peer leadership program with and for them, because they had such interesting ideas about how they wanted to remake their education that I basically wanted to launch a kind of design studio about redesigning college by them with their own needs in mind. And I walked into the first seminar, the first meeting of this public engagement fellows group of 7 students. About 50 had applied. It was really remarkable. And I came out and called my wife up and said, I think this is going to be the best teaching experience I've ever had in 30 years. And I've had great teaching experience, and it was. So that experience got me to realize that, and then I would say the third aha moment was, it's not just a bunch of hipster adults at the new school, it's the majority of American college students. I learned that partly from reading Lou Suarez's post-traditional manifesto and learning a lot of other things. And when I put all of those together, I realized that the democracy project had to lift up this particular issue. That it wasn't only about the jobs and the graduation rates of adult students, as crucial as those are, but what it means to be committed to democracy and education.
I am on research leave this year, which is a lovely, lovely thing. And I have a project where I'm following a group of students who started at SNL in 2008. And one of my aha moments is sort of related to the next question, is that over 80% of them graduated. But from when they first started college to when they finished, the shortest was just under 11 years. The longest was 40. These people don't show up on any reports of graduates. So, you know, one thing that higher education doesn't understand about adult learners is the way that they actually are incredibly persistent. And they, you know, they came back and averaged 2 to 3 different institutions, but they finished. The majority of them finished. So, what I wanted to ask you is, what is it that you think? What is one thing? Because we could have a long list. Catherine's over here like, oh my God, do you have to? But one or 2 things, maybe 3, since we have 3 aha moments here, that you think higher education does understand about adult learners.
Well, certainly what you said.
Yeah.
Definitely, and being part-time and being in and out over a period of years. But one thing that has become really apparent to me recently is, as my institution, and I think others, have become more aware of the adult learner as a market and wanting to serve them. When you look at the websites, you look at the messages that are going out there, it's still very oriented to the more traditional age student. And so one thing that I think higher education doesn't get is that our students are not coming to us to be prepared for life. They're in it. They are living it. They're doing it. They're changing the world around them. And I don't know if you've seen the ad for Southern New Hampshire University where Paul LeBlanc stands up there at commencement and he says, "What Southern New Hampshire University has helped change the trajectory of your lives." It's really powerful. I think that's what higher ed doesn't quite get about what our adult-focused programs are offering for the learners. And that, as Michelle said, they are so persistent. These are not people who are trying to get by with anything. And yet many of the policies are punitive. to adult learners. So they are persistent, they are experience-rich, they want to change their lives in some way for the better, and their lives are incredibly complex. I do have a much longer list.
I know you do, it's so fun. But let's give David a chance.
So building on what both of you had said, I would say 3 things that higher ed does not understand. The first is, to repeat what Michelle said, the actual reality and the scale of the reality of non-traditional students. I sometimes use the metaphor, the astronomical, the cosmological metaphor of dark matter, the matter that cannot be seen but that accounts for more than the majority of the mass of the universe. And I think adult non-traditional students are that. And part of the punitiveness is that they're not attended to, they're invisible and marginalized. The second thing that higher ed has not understood is the richness and complexity of the aspirations of adult students, who, if anything, have an even more complex mix of career and family and personal, sorry if I've been having trouble hearing me, career and family and personal and community and intellectual aspirations, always in some different mix depending on the student. But part of the invisibility of this majority is that their motives are flattened and instrumentalized in the way that they're understood. And I think the third thing that higher ed does not understand is that going to college or returning to college for non-traditional students is an emotional drama, a drama of incredible emotional resilience and incredible emotional precarity, where one bad conversation with a financial aid officer can disable you for 2 weeks. But on the other hand, graduating means you shake the rafters of the building down. It's not a transactional calculation about earnings and security, any more than any other student's education is partly transactional. It's deeply emotional.
Can I just add that higher education really doesn't know how to market to that demographic for all these reasons, all these factors. Take the obvious.
Yeah. It's interesting in my little study, there were lots of factors bringing students back to school. If you remember, fall 2008 was a little bit economically precarious, but it still took the push of an individual person that they knew to get them through the door. A coworker, a family member who said, hey, have you checked this out? So it still needed that person's touch, which is one of the things that I think is difficult.
Are you opening up to questions at all as you go along, or are you waiting to the end?
I was going to wait to the end, but if you want to jump in, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted David to explain to me what a non-traditional student is.
The next question actually gives a good frame for my own answer to that. So why don't I tease you by saying, when Michelle asks the next question, I'll be able to answer my view of that.
Why, David? Given the diversity of today's younger and older students, our adult learners really a unique population. This is a way different world than when a lot of us went to school, to college for the first time. And the younger students as well as older students are very different.
So the students I call adult non-traditional students are incredibly diverse, and they share, in my view, something really important across that diversity that distinguishes them from the diversity of traditional age students. First, some bullet points. We know that about 1/4 of enrolled undergraduates are parents, that well more than half work more than 20 hours a week, that about 45 to 50% are in school part-time, that about half are financially independent of their parental households. So they don't fit the norm of the recent high schooler attending full-time whose parents had to sign a FAFSA form. That's what I think of as the traditional student. And that can be the Iraq War vet, the barista or construction worker who's the parent who's holding down 2 part-time jobs across a whole diversity. But what I think they share, and this would be my answer to your really important question, is that in contrast to even to the traditional student whose work life and situation might be very stressful and precarious, who is in college full-time, the non-traditional student of all these different flavors cannot organize her life around a central role as being a student, but has to fit her commitment to studies in an ecology of stressors and different roles.
That leads to a lot of other questions.
Okay,
Like-
hold on. Catherine?
Well, I certainly agree with what David just said. I take this from human development, where I learned that diversity, as we grow older, we become more different from one another. So the diversity gets wider and broader. It's not just age or gender or race or ethnicity. It's language. It's religion. It's the culture in which we were raised. It's our current context. It's our jobs. It's our physical abilities. It's just an incredibly wide range of difference that makes a difference in how our adults learn and how they come to learning and experience. So I think one of your questions, Michelle, was how do we know that they're? Because they tell me. You know, they tell me what it's like to be an adult in this foreign territory, and what it's like to have the experience of being in class with 18 and 19-year-olds, which for the most part is not something they enjoy. Now, there are exceptions, obviously, but they see themselves as different and distinct, and love opportunities to connect with one another, whether it's classroom or online or in the corridor.
Every new incoming student feels that they are unique and uniquely do not fit in the space. Okay, so maybe you've experienced this, but a few programs are experiencing a little bit of economic constriction, right? So this next question speaks to this. What are the non-negotiables, the must-haves? Not the nice-to-haves, not the wish-to-haves, but the non-negotiables that you need to have a program that's really delivering high-quality, higher education for adult non-traditional learners. Bottom line, what do you have to have?
Look to David, because I have a hard time distinguishing between non-negotiable and desirable.